Thanks so much for watching. This is Beneath the Surface, day 5. So we're going to talk about how we're going to do some water testing. So I will click myself off here, but thanks for watching. I'm off, but you can hear me still. All right, so we're going to look at some warm-up questions, and just as a reminder in class, if you hadn't handed in your gizmos, that was either a single piece of paper or 2 pieces of paper stapled together, depending on your class period. Many of you turned that in after class day 4, but if you didn't turn it in, just make sure you have turned that in now. So as you walked into the classroom, you probably noticed that we had ecosystems set up around the room. So I asked everyone to not touch anything except for your own personal items on your own desk for now. And that's going to be the case for all of the days that we have our ecosystems out. Just come straight in, sit down at your own table, and we'll talk about the ecosystems once everybody is ready to do that. All right, so our warm-up, we thought about what was one abiotic factor you might have changed in your coral reef gizmos. And when you made the change, how did it affect one biotic factor? A lot of people talked about how they changed the temperature. If you raised the temperature over time, it probably caused some of the coral to bleach and may have reduced your number of coral species or the number of fish species. So the things that you changed did affect your ecosystem. And so you just want to think about that. Just kind of remember that we did some changes and we had some effects. All right. If you're ever absent from science, what should you do? You should check Schoology. So a lot of times most of the time, you'll have a video like this one that walks you through the notes that we did in class, and that might help you see what you've missed and help you figure out what you might be able to do on your own in Falcon Focus or for independent work at home. But also you can always email your teachers for all classes if you're not sure about what you missed. So please be sure to do that. Check SIS, and if you have anything that is listed as 50% or AB is for absent, automatically that's set as 50%. So just wanted to remind you also that today you're going to finish these slides, and there is an exit ticket. You want to go ahead and take care of that exit ticket if you don't do it in class. And just judging by how my first day went with these lessons, we mostly did not get through that exit ticket. So you'll probably have to do that for homework. Okay. Today, we talked about how we were going to learn about how to properly use tools to measure water quality so that we can accurately observe model ecosystems to determine how healthy those ecosystems are. We'll know we've got it when we score at least 5 out of 6 on the exit ticket. Remember, you always have 2 tries, so if you don't get 100% on that first try, always try a second time. If you don't get 100% on the first time, take a look at your notes, see if you can figure out what the answers are to the questions that you missed the first time. So that's why we give you 2 tries. These are a really good way to make sure you're ready for our upcoming tests. All right. So in class today, everyone got a plastic bag and they wrote their first name and last initial on that bag. That's your goggles bag. So each person has a goggles bag, and then everybody got a pair of goggles and put those goggles in the bag. So your goggles will live in that bag, and then all 4 people at your table, if there are 4 people at your table, all 4 people at the table will put their individual goggle bags into a bigger bag that's labeled for your table. So if you are in period 3 and you are sitting at table 5, your big bag will say 3-5, period 3, table 5. And so all 4 of you would put your goggles in there at the end of class. Goggles are going to live in a specific drawer in the classroom. It's labeled according to which class period. So once you get your goggles out, those are the goggles you're going to use for this entire unit and possibly the whole year. So you just need to keep track of them and treat them nicely. They do belong to Fairfax County Public Schools, so we want to keep track of them, and we don't want to stretch out any elastic or ruin any of the plastic. But you're going to put them on, gently adjust the straps so that they fit snugly, and if you're having trouble with that, ask a teacher to help you. Okay, at the end of the class, you're going to return those goggles to the little plastic bag and then remove the air from the bag. We've actually snipped a corner off of most of the bag so that you can't blow it up like a balloon, because that just doesn't work in our drawers. We need them to be small. All right, now note your table number. Whatever table you're sitting at has a number, and that is your group number. Okay, all of your goggles from your table are going to go into that larger plastic bag. Also, you need to know your table number for this ecosystem set of labs, because your ecosystem is labeled according to your table. All right, at the end of each class, again, we're going to have all of your goggles go into your individual goggles bag, and those individual goggles bags go in the bigger bag. You'll see that once you're in the classroom. At the end of class, you'll go back to your seat and make sure that your goggles have ended up in their own bag and then in the bigger bag. All right. Also in class today, we talked about the things that you need to know, because you're getting a participation grade over the next couple of weeks based on how you are acting during these labs. So we have some pretty important rules that we're going to follow. If you were not in class, make sure that you get a copy of this participation grade sheet. You're going to read through it and then you're going to sign it, and then I will keep it up in the front of the classroom. If I notice that I have to remind you multiple times about specific rules, I will deduct points. So you can earn a maximum of 20 points on this lab grade. This is the participation grade. And it's possible to not do great on it if you need lots and lots of reminders, but I'll try to help you. All right, so the first point is that you understand that you must wait for instructions before working at any lab station and handling the materials. Again, when you walk into the classroom, you're going to go straight to your table. Don't do anything at any of the lab stations or the ecosystems. Don't use any of the equipment until we're ready. When testing is complete, if you have done a specific test on a class day, you'll go back to your seat, and that's to help prevent accidents, because if too many people are around, there will be people carrying beakers around, and sometimes the whole ecosystem. It's just safer if we are seated as much as possible. All right. Anytime our class is testing for the water quality components or handling glass, everybody has to be wearing goggles. For the most part, we are not using glass in our class, but we will be doing the water quality testing. And there will be times that if you're at your table section and you are going through slides or something on your computer, you might not need to have your goggles on. But if you're not sure, put them on. Okay. Now, never put testing water back into that ecosystem. So you're going to be taking samples out of your ecosystem, and you'll carry a small beaker, a little cup, from one place to another, and you're going to be testing that water. Once you've tested that water, it goes down the sink, because you might get chemicals in there you don't want to introduce to your whole ecosystem. So just keep that in mind. Never put your testing water back into the ecosystem. Also, we use pipettes that are like really specialized eyedroppers to extract water from beakers and things, especially when we're doing nitrite testing. Don't put your pipettes in the ecosystem. Make sure you don't do that. You're always going to take some sort of a sample in a cup or a beaker, and you're going to use your pipettes in the beaker or the sample cup. All right, we will use testing vials, and as you go through the lesson today, you're going to learn what a vial is. We're going to use testing vials particularly when we're testing for nitrites. Okay, those vials are sometimes glass, although hopefully we can use plastic ones this whole time. And they're small and narrow, and so you want to make sure that they are inside a different plastic beaker. You'll see some instructions on this. So you want to have your nitrite vial inside a plastic beaker so that it doesn't get knocked over, especially because you have to wait 5 minutes for that test. So what I'm saying is, please don't put those vials just by themselves on top of the table. All right. The next thing is, I will share my readings and collaborate with my team. Okay, that's you, and you have a team. Your team is your whole table. So if you're at table 6, that means table 6, everyone is taking measurements from ecosystem 6. So each person at the table is going to have a different job, usually. So if you're the dissolved oxygen person, you go and you measure dissolved oxygen and you write that down in your packet, you need to share that with the other people at your table, at table 6. Somebody else is going to share their information with you about nitrites or about temperature or about pH. So you are going to share and collaborate with your table team. Also, this is a really big deal. You want to clean up and return your lab space to its original and organized state. So for the duration of this lab, even if the bell rings, nobody's leaving until we make sure that all of the equipment we expect to see at each ecosystem station is where it belongs and in its correct state. So we'll try to have enough time at the end of each class to make sure that everything's organized. Okay, also, we will have some live organisms, plants and animals in our ecosystems. We will respect those live organisms and we will be safe and listen and enjoy the experience. It is really fun and great that in our science class we get to do hands-on materials practice. So here this says, I understand the model ecosystem rules. So hopefully you've kind of checked along each one of those boxes as we talked about them. You're going to sign your name or write your name on that signature box, and then your teacher will collect. Your teacher would be me or Mr. Bazan in this case, but you might be in another classroom. Your teacher's going to collect those contracts. All right. When you get your contract, make sure you write your first and last name on the name line, write your period, and then you're definitely going to sign before your teacher collects your paper. All right, think back when we talked about biodiversity. What type of model did we say that we were going to create and observe? You may remember this. We said that we're going to have a model aquatic ecosystem. And so that's true. That's what we're going to have. So here is an example of a model aquatic ecosystem. So we have water, that's aquatic, right? We have some rocks in the bottom, small rocks here, and then bigger rocks kind of in a pile. Depending on your class, your ecosystem might look a little bit different. Mrs. Thomas's class has a big rock instead of a bunch of medium-sized rocks. Mrs. Thomas's class has brightly colored fish tank gravel. Miss Nordai, Miss Bremel, and Miss Residual have all natural colored rocks, I believe. So yours might look a little bit different. You just want to make sure you know what your aquatic ecosystem looks like. This particular one that we're looking at right now also has some plants in it. So today, your first day, you're not going to have any plants in your ecosystem. It's going to look more like this. Okay, so think back to when you did your coral reef gizmos. And remember, you were observing how changes in an abiotic system, changes to the abiotic factors had an effect on the biotic factors in your ecosystem. So if we changed the pH in our gizmos, it did affect the number of fish species we had over a number of years. We're going to do this in real life with our own ecosystems. We're going to see what changes in the abiotic factors due to the biotic factors that are in our ecosystems. All right, so right now this is kind of what our ecosystems look like. But are they really ecosystems? Well, in order to have an ecosystem, it has to have biotic and abiotic components. Right now, we have rocks and water, nothing living. So it's not quite an ecosystem yet, but it will be soon. All right, safety first. Do remember that anytime we are doing water testing, we need to have our goggles on for safety. So there are some chemicals that we use when we are water testing, particularly with the nitrites, but also there are some chemicals involved with our meters, the fancy meters that we're using. So be sure that you have your goggles on. If you have been anywhere near any of the ecosystems, you probably want to wash your hands afterward. If you got any chemicals from the nitrite testing, you would want to wash those off. And you never know quite what's growing in those ecosystems, so it's just a good idea to go ahead and wash your hands. All right, remember all the organisms that we use in this investigation should be treated in a safe and humane and responsible manner. So we want to be careful with our creatures and our plants. All right, everybody has gotten a packet called My Aquatic Model Ecosystem Packet. Please write your first and last names, write your period. Your group number is your table number for Mrs. Thomas's class. It probably is your table number in all classes. And then we'll talk about how you get your letter in a moment. This is something that you need to keep track of talk about letters in a moment. Sorry. So it is 3-hole punched. It lives in your binder. Don't lose it because you're going to turn it in at the end of the whole unit. All right. At each table, you're going to decide who's A, who's B, who's C, and who's D. We're going to rotate through jobs, so everybody's going to get to do the different jobs. This just helps us keep things a little more organized and less chaotic. So once you decide who is A, who is B, who is C, and who is D, you're going to add your letter to the front of your ecosystem packet. If you're at a table that does not have 4 people, you're going to generally have the first person who finishes whatever test they're doing on a given day, they're going to work on the 4th test. Or if you're at a table which normally has 4 people and one person's absent, somebody's going to want to make sure to get that extra data. So you'll work together as a group if there are only 2 or 3 of you at a table at some point, because you want to test everything. Okay. So again, first name, last name. That should be on your ecosystem packet, and then your class period. Now you know your group number is your table number, and you want to put your letter so that each person at your table group has a different letter. Okay, it's our holy grail for the next 4 weeks. Don't lose it. Okay, I have printed enough copies for every single person to have one. If you need more, you will need to figure out how to get that printed out on your own, because we don't have extra copies. All right. You're going to turn it in at the end for a grade, so make sure that as you write numbers down or as you're completing information searches or whatever, you just want to make sure that things are clear enough that you will be pleased with yourself when you turn those in. All right. Find this page in your packet. I think it's the 3rd piece of paper. It says Data Table. It talks about monitoring abiotic factors. So in class, I asked everybody to think about which abiotic factors we are measuring. When I did a screenshot, you can see my cursor was right there. Sorry about that. We have 5 things. We're going to measure temperature. We're going to measure dissolved oxygen. That's what DO stands for. pH, which is really potential hydrogen. Sometimes I call it perhydrogens. Nitrite. And we're going to measure water quality. So these are all quantitative measurements because we're actually going to be able to put a number down. So on our first day, day 5, we didn't actually record anything, but our initial day, the first day we record, is going to be day 0. All right, so we've talked about the 5 abiotic factors we're going to be observing and recording. They are temperature, which is how hot or cold something is. Water clarity, how clear is the water? Dissolved oxygen, how much oxygen is dissolved in that water and available to particularly the fish and animals that are living in the water. pH, is it an acidic water situation? Is it basic? So there's a particular range that is comfortable for our plants and animals. And then how many nitrites, what is the quantity of nitrites in our water? Too many nitrites, that's bad. So lots of dissolved oxygen, that's good. And pH, we like it to be in between 6 and 9, but you're going to learn more about that as well. All right. So if you're testing for nitrites, you're going to find these materials in a cup at your ecosystem station. When you go through your assignments, your Google assignments in today's lesson, you'll see a whole slide deck, that talks about nitrites. Go ahead and use that slide deck to figure out information about your nitrites. You're going to get through all of our testing parameters, but I'm just going to tell you there's going to be one whole slide deck about nitrites. Oops, sorry. There's going to be a slide deck about temperature. So we use a probe, this metal probe, you're going to put into your water system to measure the temperature, and it'll give you a digital measurement in Celsius. We'll use a fancy probe like this. Now, these are brand new probes in our classrooms this year, so we need to be really careful with these. They have a membrane at the bottom, so we need to be super gentle. That silver band you see needs to be under the water when you're measuring, but you don't want to rest the very bottom of the probe in the bottom part of your cup. You want to kind of have it hovering. So you're going to set that in your water as you're measuring dissolved oxygen. I keep clicking the wrong clicker, sorry. Okay, this is a slightly different probe, and this measures our pH. There is a glass bulb at the end, so be super, super careful. Again, don't really rest this on the bottom of your sample container. Kind of let it be hovering in the water, otherwise it gets a little persnickety. All right, so glass bulb right there. You're going to be careful. It's pretty well protected, but this is an expensive probe, so we want to be careful with it. Again, you're going to be doing different Google assignments for each of the water quality parameters, and those individual slide decks are going to give you really specific information. Okay, finally, we're going to talk about water clarity. So this water here is pretty clear. This is pretty murky. At the back of each one of the ecosystems, I have taped on this particular picture here. So you're going to decide, looking at the water in your ecosystem, what number here of clarity does it match the best. Okay, so you can see this is pretty clear, but this guy pretty murky, a 4 or a 5. So you're going to look at your own ecosystem, and these are where we're getting our clarity numbers that you're going to record. All right, so please make a drawing of your ecosystem. Use this whole space, okay? And you're going to draw your ecosystem. If you are happy with your artistic abilities, you can do a 3D version. You can just do 2D if you want. Please don't color things in right now because you're only going to have water and rocks right this minute. We will be adding things in, so you want to make sure that you leave yourself space to add things in. But this whole big image you can use. Okay, so side view, just so that you have a picture here in your slide deck. This is a side view, or if you're in the classroom, you can look at your actual ecosystem. Mrs. Thomas's class and I believe Miss Nordai's class, we have big rocks instead of a whole bunch of medium-sized rocks. So just look at yours and see what you've got going on. All right. So you're going to be learning about each abiotic factor. You're going to be using slide decks that are available to you in your in your Schoology classroom. Okay, it's going to help you learn how to test. And after you have learned how to test, you're going to practice testing at least one test on day 5. All right, so in Mrs. Thomas's folders, it looks like this for period 5, hopefully for every period. You're going to have, this is your exit ticket. Don't do that until you've done all of the slide decks. There's a slide deck for nitrites, how to do your nitrite measurements. Slide deck for pH, how to test for pH. A slide deck for oxygen, dissolved oxygen, and a slide deck for temperature and clarity. After you've done all of those and you feel pretty comfortable that your packet is filled out well, then you can try your exit ticket. All right, so we're going to give 18 minutes for people to try to go through some of these. But you might want to figure out what job you're going to do first, and make sure you read up on that job first, because you can do these in any order. So if you're person A, you know you're going to test for temperature and clarity. If you're person B, you're going to test for dissolved oxygen. If you're person C, you're going to test for pH. And if you're person D, you're going to test for nitrite. Notice these all are color coded, so when you're at your station, you'll see similar colors at your stations. Okay, so my suggestion is if you know your letter already, you're going to, whichever letter you are, start with that test. Because that way once you've finished reading about one of your tests and once you've filled in your packet, you'll be able to actually test in the classroom. All right, so we have some normal factors that we can think about. And these things are discussed in your slide decks, but in general, our temperatures that we're looking for are 2 to 23 degrees Celsius, remember metric. Our dissolved oxygen, we would like for it to be greater than 5 milligrams per liter. If we are looking at pH, if we are in the range of 6 to 9 when we use the pH meter, we're probably in good shape. Nitrates, we'd like for them to be less than 1 ppm part per million. And then water clarity, as we are looking on that chart, we would like for our water clarity to be less than 3. So these are some normal ranges. These are posted around the room. And for real, if you're able to try this, you would actually be filling in information. But for our day 5, we are not filling in any information. We're just kind of practicing how to do the tests. All right. So I think that since we didn't record anything, I think we're okay. All right. Thanks so much for watching. Let me turn this off.